Aliana stood at the observation deck of the Valorian warship, watching the stars blur into streams of silver light. Her hand rested on the cold metal railing, her 7 fingers drumming an anxious rhythm. Behind her, in their shared quarters, slept the human she had married 3 cycles ago, John. The name still felt foreign on her tongue. Even after all this time, the marriage had been political, nothing more. When the Galactic Council decreed that each species must form strategic alliances through unions, Aliana's family had chosen a human from the distant Sol system. Humans were considered weak by most galactic standards, short-lived, fragile, lacking the telepathic abilities or enhanced physiology of the elder races. But they were clever, and Earth had resources the Valorian Empire needed. Aliana had accepted her duty without complaint. She was a commander's daughter, raised to serve her people above all else. On their wedding day, John had smiled at her with those strange, expressive eyes that humans possessed, and she had felt nothing but the weight of obligation. That was before the war. The Crithian horde had swept through the outer colonies like a plague of shadows, their biomechanical armies consuming everything in their path. The Council's fleets had fallen one by one, and now the horde was pushing toward the core worlds. Aliana's ship, the Eternal Sentinel, was part of the last defensive line protecting Valoria Prime. She had expected John to remain in the civilian sections during combat, as most non-military spouses did. Instead, he had requested assignment to the tactical division. Against her better judgment, Aliana had approved it. Perhaps she had wanted to see what humans were truly capable of when pressed. The answer had shattered everything she thought she knew. The first battle had erupted without warning. Crithian vessels tore through subspace, their organic hulls pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. The Eternal Sentinel shuddered under the first barrage, shields flickering as energy weapons scored its armor. Aliana commanded from the bridge, her 3-chambered heart pounding as she coordinated defensive patterns. Beside her, John sat at a tactical console, his fingers moving across holographic displays with inhuman speed. Crithian fleet composition analyzed, he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. 17 capital ships, 43 frigates, estimated 200 fighters. Identifying weak points in their formation, Aliana barely had time to process his words before John began issuing coordinates, targeting solutions, appearing on her command screen faster than her tactical AI could generate them. The weapons officer scrambled to keep up, firing at vectors that seemed impossible until Crithian ships began exploding in precise succession. "How are you?" Aliana started. But another wave hit, and there was no time for questions. The battle raged for 6 hours. 6 hours during which John never stopped, never slowed, his mind working like a quantum computer made flesh. He predicted enemy movements before they happened, calculated trajectories that defied conventional physics, found vulnerabilities in Crithian bioarmor that Valorian scientists had missed for decades. When the enemy finally retreated, leaving behind a graveyard of shattered vessels, the bridge crew stared at John in stunned silence. He slumped in his chair, sweat coating his pale skin, his hands trembling from exhaustion. "Adrenaline's wearing off," he muttered, accepting the water Aliana handed him. "I'll be useless for about an hour." That night, as they stood alone in their quarters, Aliana finally asked the question burning in her mind. "What are you?" John laughed, a bitter sound. "Human. Just human. Your people read our history files, right? The wars we fought among ourselves for thousands of years? We evolved for this, Aliana. Not for strength or telepathy or long life. We evolved to kill each other efficiently." He met her eyes, and she saw something ancient there, something that had survived countless generations of conflict. "You married me for duty. I understand that. But when I'm in combat, when everything depends on split-second decisions and pattern recognition and the ability to think 3 steps ahead of death itself, that's when I'm most alive. That's when I'm what my species was made to be." In the battles that followed, Aliana watched her husband transform. Other ships in the fleet began requesting his strategic input. Commanders who had once dismissed humans as primitive now sought John's counsel like supplicants before an oracle. During the Battle of Crimson Nebula, his tactical coordination saved 70,000 lives. At the siege of Thanatos Station, he broke a Crythian blockade that had held for 8 months. They called him the Battle Deity, this human who could see through the fog of war with preternatural clarity. Legend spread through the fleet that he never slept, that he could predict the future, that he was something more than human. Aliana knew the truth was both simpler and more profound. John was exactly what he claimed to be. A product of a species that had spent its entire existence perfecting the art of survival through warfare. The night the Crythian horde finally sued for peace, Aliana found John on the observation deck, the same place where she had stood cycles ago, watching the stars and wondering about the stranger she had married. "We won," she said softly, standing beside him. "We survived," he corrected, his voice hollow. "There's a difference." She took his hand so small compared to hers. 5 fingers instead of 7, yet capable of such precision, such calculated destruction. "I married you for duty," she said, echoing his words from long ago. "But I would choose you now, not for what you can do, but for who you are when you're not fighting, for the man who still tries to smile, even after everything you've seen." John looked at her, and for the first time since the war began, something softened in his expression. "I'd choose you too," he whispered. They stood together as the fleet began its journey home, a Valorian commander and a human battle deity, bound by duty but staying for something else entirely. Behind them, the stars shone with the light of a million worlds, each one alive because of the choices they had made. And in the quiet of that moment, Aliana finally understood. Humanity's gift to the galaxy wasn't their weakness or their strength. It was their terrible, beautiful capacity to become whatever survival demanded, and then somehow to remain human in spite of it.